Hello, Texas!
Congressman Budd는, it's very nice meeting you.
Thank you, Arthur. It's good to meet you as well. Thanks for having me.
This is One Korea Network. My name is Arthur Lee, and I'm actually a North Korean defector, and my background is in business and trade between China and North Korea.
Yes.
And I know you voted in favor of or one year North Korean Nuclear Sanction Act 4 years ago.
Yes.
Then why do you think sanctions on North Korea is important?
Yeah, look, that was such a tragedy, and I thank you for understanding that, and I'm so glad that you're here and for your history.
Thank you.
And you have much to teach us because it's such a closed society
Yes.
that as average Americans, we know very little about it. But we've seen the atrocities, we've seen the oppressions. And whether you look at a country like Iran, or you look at the more oppressive side of China, or if you look at North Korea, we can't allow them to economically flourish. So one of the tools that we have as a strong economy in America are sanctions. It's so valuable for the 200 countries around the world to trade with the United States. And so to support liberty for all, we want to encourage sanctions for those who are oppressive and tyrannical and totalitarian, ultimately to break that regime so that the people could have freedom.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think a sanction is one of the biggest leverage the U.S. government has.
Yes.
And as you probably know, the current South Korean government is trying to dismantle sanctions against North Korea to appease the Kim regime.
Yeah.
And then the top officials from the South Korean government recently urged that U.S. should reconsider sanctions. And what do you think? What are your thoughts on South Korean government's approach?
Well, I've been to South Korea within the last several years. I think it was shortly after the Otto Warmbier tragedy. Look, I think that's ultimately their sovereign decision. I would discourage them from increasing trade and from dismantling the sanctions. I mean, you have if you've seen the picture that's very famous on the internet of North Korea and South Korea at night.
That's true.
And you can see the utter darkness in North Korea and all that goes with that. And you can see the light in South Korea. So why would they want to become more like North Korea? Why doesn't North Korea, they easily, I mean, President Trump extended an olive branch of, that he could increase his freedoms.
That's true.
And we would hope that the Kims would do that. But so far, I don't see it. So I want them to come our direction and towards freedom rather than us to legitimize oppression.
Sure. I personally believe sanction is the best way to convince North Korean regime to act properly. And one question I have here is, if you are a president of the United States, how do you deal with North Korean dictator?
I think that being strong is always an asset. And we were very nervous in early 2017 about the relationship with North Korea. But President Trump, I thought he was unconventional, but he was strong. He had a business mind, he had tremendous strength, and I think he won with his unconventionality. He did not legitimize the North Korean government, but he offered them a pathway to move forward. And look, ultimately, we want the world to be safe from nuclear attack. We don't want. We think that that's one way that North Korea would get legitimacy is through nuclear strength, and so we want to take that off the table and give them a path to economic prosperity if they move towards freedom. And we want them to feel the benefits of freedom. Although that's really not in their operating system. That's not how they think. So very, very difficult. But I like the way that President Trump handled it with absolute strength, and yet offering them a pathway towards freedom.
Thank you for your view. And one more question is, China has been supporting North Korea for decades. So what U.S. government should take, what approach the U.S. government should take on China?
Yeah, What I see is tremendous things in China that need to be investigated. We need to understand the Wuhan lab. We need to absolutely understand some parts of the U.S. involvement there in funding. And was it a gain of function research there? What are they doing in regards to oppressing some people groups in China? And what are they doing to enable a North Korean dictatorship as a proxy against the U.S.? So that's very concerning. If you look at the geography of North Korea, you see the longest border is with China.
Yeah.
And then you also see a very short border, perhaps, with the Soviet Union, with Russia. I was there when it was the Soviet Union, so it was many years ago, but with Russia. And so, I mean, that's two land connections with some of the worst dictatorships in the world. So very concerning. And I think we need to be strong. And we need, of course, because China is on the world stage, the second largest economy, we need to be engaged with them, but we need to be very strong. We need to have a strong military and a strong economy to afford that military. And I think that is good for the world when the U.S. is strong.
I mean, as far as I know, China is allowing North Korean, government to do smuggling, and then they secretly help North Korean government to do illegal activity, and despite the UN sanctions. So I think your approach is tremendous, approach, I guess. And another question I have here is about South Korean situation. So have you heard about South Korea's current situation, where its freedom and then rights is diminished by the current South Korean government? So especially the North Korean human rights activists who has been sending information with balloons to North Korea is legally banned by the South Korean ruling party and the government. So what do you think on South Korean government's and the ruling party's approach?
Well, you're in such close proximity. I mean, you have the long border, and again, my brother in 1990 was a helicopter pilot along that border. So I prayed for South Korea for a long time, and our U.S. relationship with them, and the presence of 35,000 or so U.S. soldiers that are there. I think U.S. strength, but I want to make sure. I see that North Korea and other totalitarian regimes that are socialistic and communistic, they're not strong enough to go face to face with a Western alliance. So what they'll do is they'll try to make us, they'll erode us from the inside through disinformation. If it's promoting critical race theory in a university, if it's sending disinformation to South Korea to help break apart the strength of that society, if that's from China, if that's from Russia, if it's from others, they don't want strong, free countries. And they don't want to go to war with them either. We don't want that either. But what they'll do is they'll try to make another nation commit suicide. And I'm afraid that's what we're having. We're seeing either the radical left, which are complicit with many around the world, against the United States. And you're probably seeing some of those same principles at play in South Korea, where oppressive regimes will send disinformation into a society and take the progressive or leftist side and will prop them up. It's hard to pin down. You see it in universities, you see it in other places, but you can see the evidence of it. You can see the fingerprints of it.
Recently, South Korean President Moon Jae-in had interview with Times, and he talks about Kim Jong-un, and he assessed Kim Jong-un is bold and innocent and has very good leadership. And what's your personal perspective on Kim Jong-un?
I can't say. When I'm in the U.S., I focus on mostly U.S. issues, not on the foreign affairs. But if I'm able to serve in the U.S. Senate, which I'm running for right now, I'll certainly pay close attention to that. But anybody that supports a strong relationship with the U.S. and promotes freedom of its own people to make their own decisions, that's someone I would support. So if a president supports that, then I'll support them internationally. We want them to allow their people to be more free and to mirror in their own cultural way, a way that allows their people to prosper.
That will be my final question. And then, do you have any message to your fellow South Koreans and North Koreans who fight against communism and totalitarianism?
I would say put their ultimate hope in our God, our Creator, and I would ask Him for mercy and for freedom. ultimately he's the one that gives us true freedom.
Thank you, sir. It'll be my honor.
Yeah.
And then nice
Nice to
meet
meet
you.
you. Thank you.